This clarification aligned with established legal standards, as municipal courts generally do not have jurisdiction over immigration matters and focus solely on local code enforcement. Observers noted that the exchange highlighted common misconceptions surrounding traffic enforcement and immigration status. Legal professionals later explained that traffic violations are civil or minor criminal matters and are adjudicated independently of a person's nationality or residency background. The judge's handling of the case reinforced this separation by directing questions back to the facts of the citation and the steps required for compliance. As the hearing progressed, the judge reviewed the issuing officer's report, the driver's explanation, and the available documentation. The involvement of the high-profile individual was acknowledged but ultimately deemed irrelevant to the legal determination. Court officials later confirmed that no special consideration was given to any party based on public recognition, and that the proceedings followed standard municipal court protocol. The case became a point of discussion largely because it illustrated how routine legal processes can attract widespread attention when public figures are involved. Media coverage focused on the unexpected confrontation and the judge's firm adherence to procedure, while legal commentators emphasized that the underlying issue remained a standard traffic matter. The incident served as an example of how courts manage public attention while maintaining legal consistency. In the days following the hearing, court administrators reiterated that such cases are resolved daily across the country, often without public notice. They emphasized that the legal system is designed to handle cases based on evidence and applicable law, regardless of who is present in the courtroom. The matter involving the immigrant driver and the public figure ultimately underscored the importance of due process, the limits of courtroom participation, and the routine nature of traffic enforcement proceedings, even when they become the subject of broader public discussion. Judge Frank Caprio presided over the proceedings in accordance with established municipal court protocol, maintaining a structured and orderly hearing despite the heightened attention surrounding the case. Court records indicate that from the outset, the judge emphasized that the purpose of the hearing was to determine responsibility for a specific traffic violation, based solely on the evidence presented and the applicable local statutes. He reminded all individuals present that the court operates under defined legal standards and that personal opinions, public recognition, or external attention would not influence the outcome. As the case progressed, Judge Caprio ensured that both the immigrant driver and the court officer responsible for issuing the citation were given the opportunity to present their account. The officer's report outlined the circumstances of the traffic stop, including the date, location, and nature of the documentation issue that led to the citation. The judge reviewed the report carefully, asking clarifying questions to confirm whether the stop complied with procedural requirements and whether the citation accurately reflected the alleged violation. This review followed standard practice in traffic court, where the judge must verify that enforcement actions meet legal thresholds. When the immigrant driver addressed the court, Judge Caprio allowed the use of a translator to ensure clear communication. He asked the driver to explain the situation in detail, including any steps taken to comply with registration requirements prior to the traffic stop. According to the transcript, the judge listened attentively and requested supporting documentation, such as receipts or appointment confirmations, to substantiate the driver's explanation. This approach reflected the court's obligation to assess credibility and intent, factors commonly considered when determining appropriate penalties in minor traffic cases. During the hearing, the judge addressed the involvement of the high-profile individual who had spoken earlier. He clarified that while members of the public may observe proceedings, the court's decision would not be influenced by statements from individuals who were not parties to the case. Judge Caprio noted that the law applies equally to all defendants, and that the court's role is to interpret and enforce regulations, not to arbitrate public debates or respond to outside pressure. This statement aligned with judicial ethics guidelines that require impartiality and independence. After reviewing all relevant information, Judge Caprio explained the legal framework governing the violation. He outlined the specific statute related to vehicle registration and documentation, noting the typical penalties associated with non-compliance. He also referenced the court's discretion to consider mitigating factors, such as a defendant's prior record, efforts to correct the issue, and the absence of aggravating circumstances. Legal analysts later observed that this explanation was consistent with common judicial practice in municipal courts, where education and compliance are often prioritized over punitive measures for first-time or minor offenses. The ruling itself reflected this balanced approach. Judge Caprio determined that while the citation was valid based on the facts presented, the circumstances warranted a measured response. He reduced the financial penalty typically associated with the violation and set a deadline by which the driver was required to provide proof of completed registration. The judge emphasized that failure to meet this requirement could result in reinstatement of the original fine or additional penalties, underscoring that leniency was conditional upon compliance. Court officials noted that the decision was recorded as part of the public record and followed existing guidelines for similar cases. The judge's reasoning was articulated clearly to ensure that the defendant understood both the obligations imposed by the ruling and the consequences of non-compliance. This clarity is considered a key component of effective judicial administration, particularly in cases involving defendants who may be unfamiliar with local legal procedures. Observers in the courtroom reacted quietly as the decision was announced, with attention focused on the judge's explanation rather than any reaction from those present. Legal experts later commented that the ruling demonstrated how judicial discretion can be applied to achieve practical outcomes while maintaining respect for the law. By combining enforcement with guidance, the court sought to resolve the matter efficiently and prevent future violations. Following the hearing, court administrators reiterated that Judge Caprio's approach was consistent with his broader judicial philosophy, which emphasizes fairness, accountability, and accessibility. They confirmed that similar rulings are issued regularly in cases involving minor traffic violations, regardless of the defendant's background. The presence of public attention, they noted, did not alter the legal standards applied or the procedural steps followed. The case concluded without appeal, and no further action was scheduled pending the driver's submission of the required documentation. Legal analysts highlighted that the outcome illustrated the role of municipal courts in managing everyday legal issues and providing resolutions that balance enforcement with realistic compliance measures. The judge's handling of the matter reinforced the principle that courts function to apply the law consistently, even when proceedings attract public interest, and that judicial decisions are grounded in evidence, procedure, and established legal discretion, rather than external influence. The case also drew attention to broader issues surrounding traffic enforcement, immigration status misunderstandings, and the role of judicial discretion in lower courts, all of which are frequently present in municipal legal systems but rarely receive public focus. Legal experts noted that traffic violations are among the most common matters handled by local courts, with thousands of similar cases processed daily across jurisdictions. These cases often involve documentation issues, missed deadlines, or administrative delays rather than intentional wrongdoing, particularly among individuals who have recently moved, changed employment, or are unfamiliar with local regulatory requirements. In this instance, the immigrant driver situation reflected a pattern commonly seen in traffic courts, where compliance challenges arise from transitional circumstances rather than disregard for the law. Legal professionals emphasize that vehicle registration and licensing systems can be complex, especially for individuals navigating them for the first time in a new jurisdiction. Administrative backlogs, appointment delays, and differences between state or municipal requirements can contribute to situations in which drivers are temporarily out of compliance, despite ongoing efforts to meet legal standards. Courts routinely assess these factors when determining outcomes in such cases. The public reaction to the case highlighted ongoing misconceptions about the relationship between traffic enforcement and immigration status. Legal scholars clarified that municipal and traffic courts do not adjudicate immigration matters and do not possess the authority to determine residency or citizenship status. Their jurisdiction is limited to local ordinances and traffic codes, and defendants are evaluated based on conduct related to those laws alone. The judge's repeated clarification during the hearing reinforced this separation, underscoring that the court's concern was limited to the specific violations cited and the steps required to remedy it. Judicial discretion played a central role in the outcome, reflecting a common feature of lower courts that handle high volumes of minor cases. Judges are often granted flexibility to tailor penalties based on the facts presented, provided their decisions fall within statutory limits. This discretion allows courts to distinguish between cases involving repeated noncompliance or safety risks and those involving first-time or technical violations. Legal analysts noted that such discretion is intended to promote compliance and efficiency, reducing the likelihood of repeated court appearances or unresolved violations. The case also demonstrated how public attention can influence perceptions of routine legal processes. Media coverage and public discussion focused on the involvement of a well-known individual and the perceived confrontation in the courtroom. Even though the legal issues themselves were straightforward, court administrators noted that while public interest can bring transparency to judicial proceedings, it can also create misunderstandings about how decisions are made. In this case, the outcome aligned closely with how similar violations are typically resolved, regardless of who is present in the courtroom. From a policy perspective, the case prompted discussion about access to legal information and language assistance in traffic courts. Advocates pointed out that defendants with limited English proficiency may face additional challenges in understanding citation requirements, court procedures, and compliance deadlines. The use of a translator in this hearing was cited as an example of how courts attempt to ensure due process and clear communication. Legal experts emphasize that such measures are essential to maintaining fairness and preventing unnecessary penalties that result from miscommunication rather than intentional noncompliance. The ruling also illustrated the preventative role of traffic courts, which often seek to resolve issues before they escalate into more serious legal or financial consequences. By setting clear expectations and deadlines for compliance, courts aim to encourage corrective action and reduce repeat violations. This approach is consistent with broader judicial objectives to promote public safety while minimizing undue hardship, particularly in cases involving minor infractions. Observers noted that the case underscored the importance of judicial independence, especially when proceedings involve individuals with public recognition. Ethical guidelines require judges to remain impartial and to avoid the appearance of favoritism or bias. Legal analysts reviewing the case stated that the judge's handling of the matter adhered to these principles, as the decision was grounded in statutory authority and documented mitigating factors, rather than external influence. The broader discussion generated by the case also touched on public expectations of accountability and fairness in the legal system. Commentators noted that high-profile attention can sometimes lead to assumptions that outcomes are influenced by status or publicity. However, court records and procedural reviews indicated that the decision followed standard practices commonly applied in similar cases. This consistency was cited as evidence of the system's capacity to apply rules uniformly, even under public scrutiny. In the weeks following the hearing, legal professionals referenced the case as an example of how routine court proceedings can become focal points for larger social conversations. While the facts of the case remain limited to a traffic citation and its resolution, the surrounding discussion reflected broader concerns about access to justice, public understanding of legal processes, and the role of discretion in achieving equitable outcomes. Ultimately, the case served as a reminder that municipal courts function as the front line of the legal system, handling everyday matters that directly affect individuals' lives. These courts balance enforcement with education, accountability with flexibility, and efficiency with fairness. The attention generated by this hearing highlighted how even ordinary cases can illustrate foundational legal principles, including equal treatment under the law, the separation of legal jurisdictions, and the careful exercise of judicial discretion within established legal frameworks.